So as we transition into focusing on solely Josephus's potential 70 weeks view, is that we know that we just picked up one piece with the 70-80 destruction fulfilling Daniel 9:26b in Josephus's mind, with him saying previously that Daniel's prophecies were unique when compared to all other prophets, because his included predictions that had a time component in them. That being said, is that we can start with this current layout for his potential 70 weeks view. In regards to the Mashiachs in 925 and 926a, is that we don't know if Josephus read it as referring to one or two people, because he never comments on when the 70 weeks start or anything about 925 through 926a. What I can most assuredly say is that Josephus wouldn't agree with the rabbis in regards to chronology, as he dates Daniel 8's prophecy 408 years before Antiochus' desolation. We know from 1 Maccabees 1:5-4 that 167 BC is the abomination of desolation in the 145th year by subtracting it from 312 BC when the Seleucids came to power. This is matched by Josephus with him adding the synchronization to the 153rd Olympiad. If you remember that some early church writers used the Olympiad's era system to mark their 70-week system like Cyril did. The main thing is that the first Olympiad began in 776 BC. A mistake a person could make, though, here is to simply subtract 612 years from 776 BC and land on 164 BC and think that there's some type of historical error here by Josephus. That's not the case, as you need to lay this out in grid form for each year of each Olympiad to make sure that you are mapping them out correctly. So when you do that, is that you do see that the second year of the 153rd Olympiad overlapped Antiochus' desolation in 167 BC, and is why Josephus said on the 153rd Olympiad. So he was correct in saying the desolation took place there. But what it means is that Josephus dates Daniel's 8th prophecy to 575 BC, which is 24 years earlier than modern chronology places it, with the third year of Belshazzar in 551 BC. But this is far more accurate than rabbinic chronology that places Daniel 8 in 351 BC. This is just another demonstration of how the rabbis gutted out 166 years of Persian and Greek history to fit their system. Now, Roger Beckwith calculated Josephus's dating of the exile starting in 640 BC, and therefore places the first year of Cyrus to 570 BC, which Josephus said at that point the Jews had been exiled for 70 years in Babylon. William Whiston, whose English translation of the Antiquities is the one we and most people use, has book titles of the number of years between each key event. Books 11 and 12 are the ones we will quickly look at here. If you use his calculated numbers, then you would start at 160 BC for Judas Maccabeus' death. It's safe to say that Josephus would go with this date, with the 167 desolation date, that is. Then, adding on 170, 253, and 70 is that you get the respected dates. These are a little closer to the conventional dates, but absolutely nowhere near the rabbinic ones. So, even though we don't have an exact starting date, is that we at least know that he's not going with a rabbi system and dating the first temple destruction to 420 BC like they do. Overall, I think it's best and honest to just put a question mark over 925 for Josephus. But this doesn't prevent us from still trying to determine if Josephus saw this prophecy messianically, or if anything, who might have been in his thought of who was that Mashiach that was cut off in 926a. With regards to the 70th week, is that again, we need to remember that Josephus is a futurist. I'm going to pound that a little bit, in regards to the Fourth Empire's ultimate destruction. So it's on the table if Josephus put the 70th week with the 70 AD destruction, or if he saw it as a future event. So we have gleaned off what we could from antiquities in regards to his potential 70 weeks view. This leaves us with his wars account for us to cover in the study. A really useful and freely available article is Steve Mason's Josephus, Daniel, and the Flavian House. Steve is best known for his work with Josephus and how his works relate with the New Testament and Christianity's rise in the first century. He also has commentaries on Josephus's works too. In this article, Steve brings up F.F. Bruce's view on Josephus's war book and its possible connection to Daniel 9. I have this article, one here of Bruce's, highlighted because if anyone out there knows how to retrieve this thing, please send me a link or something, because I've been searching for a really long time and I just can't find it or find a way to access it, and it will be really valuable for a future video. Steve says, though, that Bruce saw Josephus identifying what he called a succession of abominations. So Daniel 9:27 would be at play here. Bruce believes that Josephus's references of the sanctuary being polluted is an abomination in Josephus's eyes. Bruce also points to the appointment of an unworthy high priest, the assassination of the former high priest Ananus, the daily sacrifice ceasing, Roman soldiers sacrificing to their standards in the temple court, the temple destruction, internal strife among Jews, and the expectation of a world ruler from Judea by the Jews. Looking at this as a composite list, is that this list does kind of sound a lot like Daniel 9. And if the dots truly do connect, then we can say with good assurance that Josephus saw the 70th week pertaining to the 70 AD destruction. But the fulfillment of Daniel 2 remains as a future event with a uncut stone in his mind. So let's take a look at Bruce's points and see if they do connect. First, starting with Josephus saying the temple was polluted. 2 times this description is given by Josephus. The they here is not about the Romans, but the varying Jewish groups who were rebelling, and some causing a lot of infighting amongst the Jews themselves. The second time he uses this, he says that the sacred floor was defiled along with polluting the sanctuary. Now, the Greek lemma for both cases is miano. A New Testament example of this is in Titus 1:15, and here you can see that each one is used with is differently inflected, like that with Josephus. A great free online resource, if you really want to get in the weeds of this kind of stuff, is this lexicon on Kata Biblon. And as you can see, it breaks down the Septuagint uses as well. It's not a photocopy like Thayer's lexicon that you will find on Blue Letter Bible. With that is that we can actually do some quick searching here to see if the Greek translators of Daniel use this word. And we can see here that 3 times it was used by the Greek translators for Daniel. Now, if you're looking in here close and you're wondering why is OG beside DN for Daniel, is because that is referring to the Old Greek version of Daniel, because there's actually 2 Greek translations of Daniel. The other is called the Theodotion, which miano was not used in it, but it was used in the Old Greek translation. What you might be noticing is that Daniel 9 is not in any of the 3 highlighted uses here. But if you really got your motor running on everything in Daniel, is that you probably did spot 11:31, because that verse contains one of the 3 times that abomination of desolation appears in the book of Daniel, and the translator does use miano in the same verse. But what this actually tells you is that polluting of the temple is not synonymous with setting up something abominable in the Holy of Holies, like a statue of Zeus, like Antiochus did. The 3 times that Daniel says abomination of desolation are the following. For each of these, we can see how the Greek versions, the 2 Greek versions, translated them. In 927 here, they agree with one another. However, in 1131, the Theodotion didn't use the same word for desolation. Why? I got a reason, or I got my own belief, but that's for another video. And then again in 1211, where they're again on the same page. In 1 Maccabees 1:5-4, you see the same Greek phrasing for its use of abomination of desolation. And in the New Testament, the 2 times Jesus refers to the abomination of desolation is that they are used as well. Which all begs the question, did Josephus use that phrase or Greek words in relation to the polluting descriptions? And the answer is no. As Mason says, Josephus nowhere uses Greek Daniel bdeluma. That unusual term would have drawn immediate attention to Daniel's famous prophecy if Josephus had so intended. Which is correct because we saw earlier that Josephus was using the same term out of Daniel 9:2. And there's a reason why the Greek of 926 doesn't have this word used. But again, that's for another video. It just gets really weedy. Needless to say, Josephus did not overtly associate the polluting descriptions with the abomination of desolation when he so easily could have. My only pushback against me on this is that he doesn't use that phrase when describing Antiochus either in Antiquities, including when he describes Antiochus' sacrificing of a pig on the altar. So it's hard to imagine Josephus not seeing this event, Antiochus, as an abomination of desolation, even though he didn't use those words. Or, maybe he didn't find that it was necessary to use those words because everyone knew it from 1 Maccabees 1:5-4, and Josephus himself was just simply, I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit more with the whole pig getting slaughtered on there too, and that's what made it so abominable. Regardless, the fact is that Josephus does not use the Septuagint bdeluma with the affairs, which strongly indicates he was not associating Daniel 9:27's abomination with the first AD Jewish war. Mason went on saying in the article, moreover, his sayings about temple catastrophes are part of a much larger priestly cultic theme in the war that is not dependent on Daniel. Finally, Josephus gives numerous causes of the city's destruction. Ananias' death is part of a larger story of rebel atrocities that, once again, is not grounded in Daniel. This is big because often you will hear that Ananias' death as a possible proposal to who the Mashiach in 926a is that was cut off. And Mason is saying I'm sorry, that just doesn't work. Collectively, Mason demonstrates that Bruce's reasoning just doesn't add up at the end of the day. Now, with that conclusion is that we're not just done with Bruce, because one of his points is that he does bring up Josephus' statement at the very end about a widespread Jewish expectation of a world ruler from Judea at that time. But Josephus, in hindsight, says that, but that was about Emperor Vespasian. Now, Mason says that Bruce is connecting Josephus' statement to 926's coming prince. But Mason correctly says that the problem with this theory is that the coming leader of 926 in the Masoretic text is evidently not favored by God. His army, the coming leader, will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and his, or its, end will be in a flood. This is correct. Josephus would not have associated the Jewish Messiah with the coming prince, as he is the one who commits the abomination of desolation in 927. The issue for Bruce, Mason, and many others is that they refuse or willing to consider or bring up the Mashiach references in 925 or 926a as possibilities for Josephus. because he flat out says that at that time, the Jews were expecting their new David. And we saw earlier that Josephus only gives Daniel the credit of providing a timeline with his prophecies of future events. So, to shy away from the 70 weeks prophecy cannot happen because it's the only one within Daniel, who is the only guy, that has a chronology component to it. And look what Josephus says in Wars in the preceding lines to this. Now, if anyone consider these things, he will find that God takes care of mankind, and by all ways possible foreshows to our race what is for their preservation, but that men perish by those miseries which they madly and voluntarily bring upon themselves. For the Jews, by demolishing the tower of Antonia, had made their temple foursquare, while at the same time they had it written in their sacred oracles that then should their city be taken as well as their holy house, when once their temple should become foursquare. This reference, without question, is Daniel 9:26b. And what Josephus is saying is that the Jews had such messianic fever and expectation going on is that they totally forgot and missed the part that Daniel also said that one day Jerusalem and the second temple are going to be destroyed again. This solidifies that our interpretation in Antiquities is correct in that Josephus saw the 70 AD fulfillment in Daniel 9:26b. So, Josephus says the Jews forgot this prophecy, and he follows this up by saying, but now, what did most elevate them? That is, give them the courage and the confidence to undertake this war against the Romans. Well, it was an ambiguous oracle that was also found in their sacred writings, how, about that time, one from their country should become governor of the habitable earth. The Jews took this prediction to belong to themselves in particular, and many of the wise men were thereby deceived in their determination. Now, this oracle certainly denoted the government of Vespasian, who was appointed emperor in Judea. The appointment in Judea is in reference to the fact that Vespasian was declared emperor by the Roman military during the siege of Jerusalem. Vespasian, leaves to take official control back in Rome, and in that process he leaves his son Titus in command of the forces at Jerusalem, and Titus is the one who ultimately destroys the city and the temple. In another great article, Roger Beckwith speculated back in 1981 that Josephus was thinking of the Son of Man from Daniel 7:13. That was the one that was really pointing to Vespasian. The clear-cut problem with that is that the Son of Man is given eternal, everlasting kingdom, and is the one who defeats the Fourth Empire, and Josephus showed this understanding as well with Daniel 2's uncut stone. But Daniel 7 is the most explicit that the Messiah will rule over the whole entire earth after defeating the Fourth Empire, whereas the other Daniel prophecies aren't that explicit. So, Daniel 7 could have easily been in the minds of the Jewish people. They were expecting a conquering Davidite, and Daniel 7 fits that bill. But, Daniel 7 cannot account for Josephus saying that the oracle was ambiguous and had a chronological component to it. And so, Josephus said, only Daniel does that, and only in Daniel 9 does it provide a timeline that does include messianic language in it, and without question has proven itself to be the most debated on and confusing or ambiguous prophecy for interpreters over the past 2,000 years. And you could even see this referred to by Roman historian Tacitus, who says, most Jews held the belief that, according to the ancient priestly writings, this was the moment in which the East was fated to prevail. They would now start forth from Judea and conquer the world. This enigmatic prophecy really applied to Vespasian and Titus, but men are blinded by their hopes. The Jews took them to themselves the promised destiny, and even defeat could not convince them of the truth. Also, Suetonius wrote on Emperor Vespasian saying that a firm persuasion had long prevailed through all the East, that it was fated for the empire of the world at that time to devolve on some who should go forth from Judea. This prediction referred to a Roman emperor, as the event showed, but the Jews applied it to themselves. Both Tacitus and Suetonius' statements reflect Josephus's and makes it clear that the Jews were thinking of the Fourth Empire's destruction at that time and were using the 70 weeks prophecy as their basis. This explains why there was such messianic fever going on in the 1st century AD, and so many Messiah claimants or people who the Jewish people saw potentially as the Messiah at that time. And Ben Zion Wacholder wrote a great article about how all early 1st AD Messianic movements were tied to the 70 weeks prophecy, and the timing of them occurred in conjunction with sabbatical years. All of this demonstrates that Josephus' statement is 100% alluding to Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. His allusion doesn't let us know if he, Josephus, personally saw the 70 weeks messianically prior to or after the 70 AD destruction. His view could have changed. So, for our purposes here, is that this is all we can definitively chart out for his view. We don't know where he was starting from. We don't know if he possibly had a gap in mind with the 70th week being still a future event. It leans that way, I believe. But at the end of the day, we just don't get a clear-cut overall opinion from him. But the one thing that we can most assuredly say is that his allusion shows that the pre-70 AD Jewish people saw the 70 weeks messianically and were expecting the Messiah's arrival in that time period. We've already shown in the Qumran video that in 11Q Melchizedek that community clearly sees Daniel 9's Mashiach as the promised Messiah, and is the Messiah the divine Melchizedek figure from Psalm 110, who is God himself, and they, the Qumran community, predicted his arrival using the 70 weeks prophecy to be around 3 to 1 BC. And even the rabbinic movement after the 70 AD destruction shows that they, the Jews, were still trying to predict the Messiah's arrival by using the 70 weeks. Because Megillah 3a says that the reason why Rabbi Jonathan ben Unziel was denied permission to translate the books in the writings, just to break in here quickly, is that this is in reference to the third section of the Tanakh being translated into Aramaic by Rabbi Jonathan for his Targum that has Daniel fallen in the writings section. Back to Megillah 3a, where he was saying that this was denied because it has in it a revelation of the end when the Messiah will arrive. The end is foretold in a cryptic manner in the book of Daniel. So, you have Jewish interpretation before and after 70 AD consistently saying that the 70 weeks prophecy is about the Messiah and it does predict his arrival. Which begs the question to all the naysayers out there is, how much more proof do you really need that this is about the Messiah? Because, let's just be honest with ourselves here for a little bit, with a little bit of logic thrown in. Since Daniel 9:26b is about the 70 AD destruction, and Daniel 9:25 through 26a is about the Messiah's arrival, is that logically it means that his arrival had to come before 70 AD. And I really doubt that I need to elaborate on which candidate perfectly falls within this time period.
Reminder, hit the subscribe button below, turn on the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment. And don't forget to visit us at justscripture.org. But in the meantime, stay salty.